Hey friends, Max Shank here, and I am actually on my 7th day with no food, so I thought I would share a little video with you about fasting and try to bust some myths and give you guys a simple understanding of what's really going on with fasting. Now, a lot of people think that it's very dangerous to not eat, and they also think that you should always eat when you're hungry, but why do we have 3 meals a day? Why is it breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And as far as I can tell, the reason for that has a lot more to do with the 9 to 5 workday and maybe a little help from the cereal companies. But basically, the reason I fast primarily is to get these psychological benefits. And I usually try to break up fasting into the psychological benefits and the physiological benefits. And when I think about the benefits of fasting psychologically, first and foremost, there's this pattern break where you are moving away from compulsive behavior to conscious behavior. And because eating is something that is so deep in our instincts, we have safety, food, and sex basically as our primary drivers in life. So if you're able to get that under control, that's really, that pause and that consciousness versus compulsiveness is really the origin of most problems. Because you could say, oh, well, heart disease kills the most people. And it's like, nah, not really. That's more like the way that people eventually die. And, well, you can say, oh, well, being obese, you're more likely to get heart disease. Well, obese is the reason, and obese is not really the reason they die either. So you ask why? Why are they obese? Well, because they eat all the time and they don't move enough. That's the answer. And it's like, no, well, why do they not have any control over the level of consumption? And you get all the way down, it's turtles all the way down, you get down to it, and really it's just whether or not you can act consciously versus compulsively. Because if you act compulsively, you have almost no chance of exceeding really well in the world right now, because food is available 24/7, media is available 24/7, everything is right there at your fingertips. So if you go pure lizard brain, you're going to look like one of those Aztec emperors just sitting on the couch, watching stuff and eating stuff, just consuming all the time, because that's our primary compulsive driver. So that pause that you get and that ability to take yourself from the compulsive to the conscious, I would call the primary psychological benefit. And I usually combine fasting from food with fasting from information as well, because boredom is actually a tremendous gift that allows you to organize your thoughts and create something from everything that you've already consumed. Most of us, myself included, we consume way more than we create. And if you just keep adding more consumption onto it, you're gonna forget most of what you saw, read, listened to, and you're not gonna have that time, that quiet time to bring creation. So the whole reason we can have light and creation is because there's that foundation of darkness. That's where the sun is. It's this giant ball of light in an ocean of darkness, basically. So the psychological benefits I find to be the best, and I think you have pretty much an unfair advantage in every part of life if you can defer gratification and act consciously instead of compulsively. So that's just some of the psychological benefits I find from fasting. And by the way, you don't need to do 7 days like I'm doing. I find 3 days is a really good sweet spot for a lot of people. And drink some water, put a little salt in there occasionally so you have an electrolyte. But other than that, your body is really good at clearing stuff out. And that is what brings us to the physiological benefits of fasting. So there are 2 things that normally happen. One is apoptosis, which is the programmed death of your cells, and those are all at a different timeline depending on which type of cells they are. So the taste buds on your tongue, those are cells, and they have about a 7 to 10 day lifespan. So those are changing all the time. And your guts, the inner lining of your guts is every couple days. Those cells are replicating and dying, and that's that natural programmed cell death. So we put a fresh guy in, basically. And the other important thing, the important word for the physiological benefits is autophagy, which is cellular recycling. That is, your body is eating those cells and breaking them down into their basic components for use elsewhere or just simply for elimination. And that's where we get to the really big problem of constant consumption and not enough energy expenditure. So when you're in that imbalance, you're not going to be clearing out the garbage, basically. And so that can create all of those really big, scary diseases. And sometimes it just creates a whole bunch of inflammation because you just imagine you have a bunch of trash in your body. So when you fast, when you stop eating, your body goes into overdrive with apoptosis and autophagy. And your body's wisdom is quite miraculous, really, because it will select the dead and damaged cells over the other. I don't know exactly how it does it. Maybe there's some sort of little flag of some kind. I know your body can do that, but anyway, without getting too into the weeds, your body prioritizes the death and recycling through apoptosis and autophagy of those damaged and dead cells when you are fasting. And you can get a little more of this just with a pure caloric restriction, but you also don't get any of the psychological benefits of just really stopping eating and, kind of drawing that hard boundary where you're like, you know what? I am the master of my domain. I'm not going to be living just on my impulse and act compulsively. I'm going to act consciously. And that is the root of most disease. Just say, like, most people die because they are compulsively poisoning themselves, either through destructive media or an excess of destructive food. And keep in mind when people are like, oh, we're going to, have a pie making competition to fight heart disease or whatever they do, that's like too late in the cycle. That's just a symptom of the problem, which is the compulsive behavior to self-soothe on some level. And I used to be chubby. I was not fat, but I was chubby. So it's like one step above husky, basically. And I developed a habit of eating anytime I felt anxious about doing homework. And it was only as I started doing this fasting more regularly, I've done probably 15 to 20 3-day fasts. I've done a few 5-day fasts, and this is actually my first 7-day fast, but I've been training regularly and walking 1 to 2 hours every day, closer to 2 hours every day, really. And I find that I have a lot more time. It's quite a peaceful experience. And all of my body's energy is focused on what I'm doing, and it's pulling off some fat, of course, which we all like. But the key there that I want to not gloss over is the self-soothing behavior with food. It's not about the substance necessarily, it's about the behavior and the root of that behavior. So for me, I would be like, oh, well, I can't do homework on an empty stomach, so I'll just run over to the refrigerator and stuff myself with food to give me some pleasure and take away from this like crippling anxiousness I feel about not doing my homework correctly as a young child. And it's kind of surprising how much of that stuff we really keep with us. So it gives you a lot of clues as to why you are doing things. And once again, bringing you from compulsive over to consciousness is super valuable. And the other thing about the physiological benefits is not just for your guts, it's not just for using fat, because of course, like an arrogant guy. Well, one of the things that happens is you switch over to ketosis, which is the fat metabolism process, as opposed to glucose and glycogen, which is what we usually do, because you eat and then your liver and muscles store glycogen, and then we use that for energy. But in the absence of that, you're going to start reducing the body fat down, and you're going to use this other process called ketosis. So I've probably been running on just that for the last several days, and I have noticed a difference in my abdominal fat. From a health standpoint, it's really fascinating to see how long people can go without food depending on how much extra body fat they have. They actually had a guy in Scotland, I believe, who fasted for about 380 days, maybe 384, I don't remember the exact number. But it was fascinating because he lost like hundreds of pounds. He was like 400 plus pounds before, but he lost tons of weight, and all he had was liquid nutrients, micronutrients. So like, magnesium and calcium and maybe some branched chain amino acids or something like that. But he didn't have calories. He just had those micronutrients, and he was able to survive without eating no solid anything for over 1 year. And when you think about it, a lot of the current mythology around health is about like eating all the time and you got to have breakfast and all these things that are very antithetical to how robust and adaptable our bodies really are. So you can discover a lot about your own inner strength from taking a break from eating all the time. And then when you reintroduce feeding, it's quite illuminating because especially if you go for a little bit longer, some of your taste buds are going to have changed, and some of the microbiome in your gut, which is responsible for some of those cravings that you have, will also have changed. And that reminds me of the fecal transplant phenomena, which, if you're not aware, they basically take healthy feces from a healthy person, a healthy fit person, put it into a fat guy or girl, and that fat person then becomes thin because they just start having different food choices. So that gut microbiome is a really powerful driver of our cravings, just making different food decisions after you've had a time to clear out those Dorito-loving bacteria in your guts. So physiologically and physically, I feel awesome. In fact, I feel like I could go for several more days. At this point, I would just like to eat something now. I went out for pizza with some friends last night, and I just sat there and hung out with them, which is probably one of the weirder things I've done. But it was a good lesson. You don't have to cave into that peer pressure, and you don't have to be eating to enjoy the company of your friends. And of course, the pizza smelled amazing. I really wanted to eat it. But I do fasting several times a year. I often do like 24-hour fasts pretty regularly, like almost once a week. 3-day fasts once a month to once every 2 months, and then I do something longer like this, maybe once every 6 months to a year. And it also depends on what other stuff is going on in my life, but I haven't had anybody who had a bad experience yet. I know there are all kinds of scary stories, but we would not have made it this far if the human body was extremely robust and extremely wise with its integration of nutrients and its ability to thrive through times of famine or just lack of nutrients. So I definitely recommend you experiment with it. I think anybody would have a great time. There's all kind of research about it, and as far as longevity is concerned, that's one of the only things we know for sure, is that if you eat too much, you won't live as long, however you decide to do it. Fasting can be a great way to reset that eating pattern. And just while I'm on that topic, the other things that are important about longevity are friendships, having a reason to get up in the morning, and some gentle, frequent exercise. It doesn't have to be crazy, and you will definitely live longer if you do Tai Chi versus sumo wrestling. And of course, those are extremes, but you get the idea. So I think fasting can be a really good tool for bringing yourself from compulsive to conscious, and that might be the most important thing. If there's anything I want you to take away from this, it's that bringing your action from compulsive to conscious is the root of most of the problems that people have. And that includes with food, that includes with media of different times, that includes, drugs of different types, whether it's caffeine or alcohol or marijuana or whatever else. And I just see so much benefit. So that's why I wanted to share it with you guys as well. So go ahead and let me know what you think. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment. And thanks again for watching. I will catch you all next time. Happy not eating.